Thank you, Jordan, and thank you, Rachel. Thank you for those opening remarks, for having us here. This is incredible participation, both in the survey online beforehand as well as in the room on this beautiful summer evening. We really appreciate you being here and are glad to get to be here with you to talk about the West Seattle Link Extension Project. My name is Lita Shaheen, and I am the Deputy Executive Director of Government and Community Relations at Sound Transit. With me, I'll be doing a lot of the presentation, but with me I also have Daniel Turner, who is our planning lead, Faith Rowland from our Real Property Group, Sandra Fan, who is also one of our project directors leading planning. We have other folks in the room as well, so we'll be prepared when we get to our question and answer session. Partners, thank you from King County Metro and elsewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in. And bear with me as I manage the mic and the mouse and so forth. So what we're going to be covering today, we'll start with a bit of project context and overview. I know that this is a very knowledgeable group of folks, so please bear with us as we just try to level set with everybody, ground us in where we are with the project and how this project came to be. We'll then talk about the station planning efforts that we've taken on, as well as transit-oriented development and what that entails. We'll then go to our acquisition and relocation process and also talk about next steps. Project context and overview. We'll start with, here is the Sound Transit voter approved system that was last approved in 2016. The system expansion plan means that every few years we are opening light rail. You may have heard recently that we opened numerous stations on the east side. We're going to be opening to Linwood August 30th. The West Seattle Link Extension Project is one of those Link Light Rail projects that will connect into the system, providing access all around the region to destinations from Everett on down to Tacoma and to the east side. We also have Sounder trains. We will have Stride Bus Rapid Transit as well. And what this means out in the community beyond providing for transit access is we are supporting jobs with this program. We anticipate 323,000 direct and indirect jobs between 2022 and 2046 as part of this program. The Sound Transit 3 plan also includes $100 million in system access fund, so we're really investing in how we get to our stations, providing for sidewalks, protected bike lanes, shared use paths, integrating bus and light rail, and also pickup and drop-off areas. From a sustainability perspective, we are one of only 200% carbon-free light rail systems in the U.S., and in 2021 our emissions declined even as we're opening new stations and having increased ridership. So that's the big picture. Now we're going to zoom in on the West Seattle Link Extension and the service and access that you'll get to see. So targeting 2032, we'll be opening the 3 line, which is the West Seattle Link Extension, from SoDo to West Seattle, or West Seattle to SoDo. That's the line that you see in pink with the number 3. So from there, you'll be able to transfer at the SoDo station to get anywhere in a regional network. But meanwhile, I do want to point out that the West Seattle is going to continue to have both light rail and the existing bus network that you have today, until we get to 2039, when we'll open a new downtown Seattle light rail tunnel. The 1 line, which is in green right now, will go from Ballard to Tacoma at that point in time. And so at that point in time, the 3 line, or the West Seattle line, is going to extend north to Southwest Everett, and it'll connect south, of course, to West Seattle. You'll be able to connect downtown to the east side on the 2 line and connect all around the network. So that is what service looks like going forward. A little bit more about the West Seattle Link Extension Project. There are 4 stations that are part of this project. When we do open to Ballard, we'll be able to take a trip from the West Seattle Junction to Westlake Station. Instead of taking 30 minutes, it'll take 16 minutes. So reducing it by about 50%. We'll improve transit service frequency, reliability, and capacity. We also, as part of this project, are facilitating redevelopment near our stations with a focus on affordable housing, and we'll talk more about that program and how that works. We're also providing a travel alternative. If folks remember when the West Seattle Bridge was closed for repairs, having a redundant way to get to where you need to go. So this is a little bit of a meaty slide, but the intent here is to share our project timeline and also to sort of talk about where we've been and how we've gotten to where we are today. You don't need to be able to read all of this. We do have handouts later if you want to grab, and of course we'll share this so folks can get it later. But our project timeline includes 3 phases. We start with planning, that's in green. We have design for a few years, and then we have construction from 2027 to 2032. I'm going to talk more about the design and construction phases and how we work with community near the end of this presentation, but right now I'm going to zoom in where we are at the moment, which is in our planning phase. During the planning phase, we are engaging, we're nearing the end of it, we are engaging around developing route and station locations, analyzing those, and engaging with community to shape that. We kicked this off with alternatives, what's called alternatives development. So defining the alternatives that we would be studying in environmental review. We engage the public in a lot of ways, from neighborhood forums to community briefings and more. We also had a stakeholder advisory group, which some people might remember, and an elected leadership group that included members from the City of Seattle elected bodies of the council, our board members, as well as a port commissioner. And folks from West Seattle and other areas along the corridor were in the stakeholder advisory group. Based on all the feedback, 3 levels of screening, the board identified alternatives we would study in an environmental impact statement, which looks at how the project and the different alternatives could affect the natural, built, and social environments. We released a draft of that environmental impact statement for public feedback and review. We got over 5,000 comments during a 90-day comment period. That, together with the feedback and the technical analysis that was in the draft EIS, the board identified preferred route and station locations or alternative, and they did request further studies of refinements to that alternative. We are now, and they did that actually unanimously, which is great for us as staff. And then we are now in the final EIS phase here, nearing the end of it, where we are preparing an update to that draft. You have a draft, then you have a final. It'll include responses to the draft EIS. It will update our analysis, and we will be publishing it, we expect, near the end of Q3 of this year. And so we haven't been able to be that specific before because we work and prepare this environmental document in collaboration or together with the Federal Transit Administration. They are our partner. And so we work together on our timelines, and we work together on the document, and we are getting closer, and so now we have a little bit more specificity for folks. So we look forward to sharing that. After we publish that, the board will, we expect them to select a project that we will build, and then the Federal Transit Administration issues what's called a record of decision. And that allows us to shift from planning to the design phase. All right. So now, this is a map. It's a little bit zoomed in on the West Seattle Link extension. So the West Seattle Link extension, of course, extends to SoDo. But here we're just zoomed in a little bit given where we are. North is pointing up, so folks can get a little bit oriented. I'm just going to briefly describe the preferred alternative here, which is in pink. All of these alternatives are in the final EIS. They go from the draft to the final. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about the preferred alternative that the board identified. So in West Seattle, the preferred alternative crosses the Duwamish on the south side of the West Seattle Bridge. The Delridge Station is an elevated station that is west of Delridge Way Southwest and north of Southwest Andover Street. The route continues southwest and goes from an elevated guideway or track to being at grade, which means kind of on the ground, and eventually ends up below ground for the Avalon Station that's on the south side of Fauntleroy Way Southwest, under Southwest Genesee Street, and 35th Avenue Southwest. And then we continue south towards the Alaska, sort of southwest, towards the Alaska Junction, in a tunnel station that's located under 41st Avenue, straddling Southwest Alaska Street, so it's kind of under both, with station entrances that are oriented to 42nd and also to 40th. And we'll have a graphic of that later. I did want to note just with this preferred alternative that what you just heard me describe, there had been a long time in our engagement, we've been hearing strong interest in having underground stations in Avalon and Alaska Junction. This alternative, the preferred alternative, does achieve that objective while at the time staying within the realigned financial plan, so the financial plan of the resources that the agency had. Our final EIS is going to include, as I mentioned, updated information on the potential impacts and benefits of this project. So I'm not going to dig into those tonight because we don't have them available yet, but we look forward to sharing that with you when we do and helping you dig into that. All right, now I'm going to talk station planning and transit-oriented development. What is station planning? We have some nice photos here that kind of hopefully evoke some of the different things that we do when we do station planning. This is really about looking at different ways from the neighborhood's perspective of how people are going to get to the station, ways we can make these trips safer and more convenient, looking at opportunities to create housing, retail space, office, shops, public open space, and really embedding what we hear from community and how these stations should be designed and how they'd like to access the stations. So the elements that are highlighted here, station entrances, walking routes, wayfinding and signage, station connections, transit-oriented development that I'll talk about in a moment, so how we develop around the stations, and then things like bike and scooter storage. Those are just some of the examples. Your feedback is really critical in this. We start at a higher, more conceptual level based on what we know about the stations, and then as we advance from planning into design, we get into more and more detail, and there's more and more opportunities to engage. We also, very much so, need to work with the City of Seattle as a partner, and we do, and King County Metro, so our agency partners, and how we make sure folks are connected between buses and all the planning that happens around stations that is really under the city's purview. Okay, so transit-oriented development near stations. This is all about making the most of the land Sound Transit has to use our needs for construction. We buy property as we construct light rail projects. That is the primary purpose for why we buy property. That's the reason we're allowed to do that, or that we need to do that. But then when we have that property, we have an opportunity to work with the community on what happens to it after that transit purpose is no longer needed. So our program expands housing opportunities with a priority for affordable housing. We create welcoming neighborhoods. That's our driving goal here, and to realize community visions through this process. And I wanted to describe it just a little bit more by using an example of transit-oriented development near the Roosevelt Station called Cedar Crossing. So whereas we've been working with you all, and you're going to see some of the opportunities when my colleague here, Daniel, presents, we start at a higher conceptual level, as I mentioned, on what are the opportunities and what do people want to see near the stations, so that as our planning team is thinking about how the station is configured, that we can plan early on to just not preclude things the community would like to see. So we start to develop that list of community priorities early. And we've started to do that much earlier with our Sound Transit 3 projects, or later projects like West Seattle Link Extension. Cedar Crossing, the Roosevelt Station, this is from an earlier effort, but I'm going to just dive into the point in time where they engage folks very specifically during the design phase, the later design phase, on what we want to see and how we make that happen within the transit-oriented development. So questions are asked of community like, what are the types of uses you'd like to see? Let's make sure we heard that. The number and the size of the unit, so who would you like to serve? What kind of public space or open space would you like to see? And what kinds of services? And so we take all of that, synthesize it, and we talk to funders, to our agency partners. It informs requests for proposals. So for this project, for Cedar Crossing, for example, we began engagement in late 2016 before the start of the construction of the station, heard from community they'd like to see affordable housing, as affordable as possible, and wanted family-sized units and childcare. as well as a desire for ground floor retail. And so those kinds of elements were all included in the request for proposals. And now what we have at Cedar Crossing is an affordable housing project that provides 254 housing units, including 2 and 3 bedroom larger units for families. There's also a partnership with Seattle Children's and Mary's Place for folks that have more intense medical needs with their families, and the ground floor has an all-ages playground for residents, bilingual childcare that's run by El Centro de la Raza, several retail spaces, and a public plaza. So you can kind of see that through line between that engagement and what we were able to achieve on the site. So we recently did some station planning engagement that you may recall. So while we have all of our work on the final environmental impact statement and all of those alternatives, we are trying at the same time to make sure, again, that we're not precluding opportunities and that we're informing the more advanced design work that happens on the preferred alternative. In the fall, we shared, so last fall, updated station design progress for SoDo Station, for Delridge, Avalon, Alaska Junction. We shared that online as well as in person at meetings. We had a couple in-person open houses, one in the fall. We gathered feedback on concepts or ideas for access, for urban design, and for TOD at those stations, transit-oriented development. And then in March, we reported on that design progress, again, through another open house, and shared the community feedback that we heard, how feedback was incorporated. I will say there was also an online open house in between, and I should probably just, there's all of this happened. It's a lot of colorful numbers here, but I just want to note, 1,200 folks responded to the survey, both in language and in English. We had a couple in-person open houses I mentioned. We had a couple drop-ins also in SoDo specifically to make sure that those communities were able to engage with us along with West Seattle here. We heard quite a bit of feedback. I'm just going to do a little bit of a snapshot of the types of things we heard. Interest in stations that are easy to navigate and move through is a priority. Interest in improved access in getting to the stations, including wider sidewalks, bike lanes, more crosswalks at stations. Interest in more housing in the transit-oriented development near stations with a focus on affordable housing. People were also interested in seeing shopping, retail, food and drink, convenient services at station, as well as community gathering spaces and activities that create vibrant and busy stations throughout the day, improving that sense of safety and vibrancy as well. We are very interested in how we can really advance those kinds of opportunities and be creative around the stations. All of that feedback is helping to refine our design and will inform how we think about transit-oriented development in the future and engage on that. I'm now going to hand it to Daniel to just talk through the station.
Thanks, Lita. I'm going to walk through the 3 stations in West Seattle just to give a little orientation on the general layout of the station site plan. So we're going to start at the Alaska Junction Station, and this is a conceptual site plan showing the potential station location, as well as some of the connections to other modes of travel and some potential transit-oriented development sites. In this graphic, it's a bit skewed graphics, and now north is kind of down to the left, so I'll just orient you quickly to the graphic. You can see Easy Street Records there, California and Alaska. If you go up the street in Alaska there, then you'll come upon the station. As Lita mentioned, the actual station platform would be underneath 41st Avenue, straddling Alaska. You'd have station entrances on either side. So an entrance on the north side of Alaska and an entrance on the south side of Alaska. And that south entrance is oriented towards 42nd Street. So you can see highlighted in pink where we anticipate the access points to be, roughly. So access from Alaska as well as towards 42nd. And then behind the site, an opportunity for transit-oriented development there in pink, or peach.
I'm sorry.
And then over on the other side of the street, another station entrance, and again an opportunity for transit-oriented development kind of built into the station entrance there. Also some of the key connections, bus routes connecting on Alaska Street with the bus stops in front of each entrance. pickup drop-off located on adjacent streets, and bicycle parking located within the station entrance. This is Avalon North, which can make you dizzy. North is to the top and right. You can see 35th Avenue running kind of across the screen there, and Avalon, another direction, Fauntleroy. So this is, as Lena mentioned, an underground station. It's not a full tunnel. You can kind of see where, to the right of the graphic, where the tracks start to go below grade there, so they're below grade but a bit open, and then they go into a closed section. You have two station entrances, one on either side of 35th Avenue. So station entrance there to the east side and to the west side. Highlighted in pink, you can see the access points. Bus routes connecting on 35th on either side of the street, as well as some other connecting bus routes along Avalon. Just going back one more, I'll just highlight a few opportunities as leaders for transit-oriented development in the area around the site where construction staging and other uses are needed to construct the project. Last one is Delridge Station. North is kind of to the left. You can see Delridge Way towards the top of the graphic, and Andover Street. Yeah, I like the pointing.
Sorry,
yeah.
Andover.
You can see the elevated
Delridge.
guideway coming along from the top of the graphic, cutting across the site, just near Nucor, and then continuing towards the west. So this is an elevated station. The station is kind of at two levels, two grades. There is a grade that is the level of Delridge Way, where we would construct a plaza to connect Delridge Way directly to the station. There's also a lower grade, which is Southwest Charlestown Street, where bus connections would be made for northbound buses. So it's kind of an interesting site where buses would be coming along, traveling northbound at that Charlestown grade, and southbound up at Delridge Way. And also highlighted in that peach color is potential future transit-oriented development.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to start this and then I'm going to hand it over to Faith. So we're really looking forward to opportunities to serve West Seattle for the future that can be there, working together on what happens around those stations and how you'll access in the future. In the meantime, we do need to acquire property in order to build a light rail system. And that means, while we are looking for opportunities to minimize those effects as much as we can, there is a need in such a dense urban environment for us to buy properties. And so we're going to just talk a little bit about how we engage with those that are potentially affected, property owners, and of course tenants as well. So just to start, briefly, going back in time again, before we released the draft environmental impact statement, which included our understanding of who would be potentially affected, we did reach out to contact potentially affected property owners. We also shared a postcard, did door-to-door to try to get the word out as much as we could, especially as the draft EIS was released. The Sound Transit Board then confirms or modifies the preferred alternative, so we have a better sense of the direction that we are headed. During this time period, we had webinars and meetings for those that would be potentially affected, property owners and tenants, as well as office hours for anyone who had questions on the draft environmental impact statement. As we approach the final EIS, we'll be doing another mailer to the broad West Seattle area to let them know about how to access the final EIS, as well as reaching out to potentially affected property owners. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Faith to talk about what's next.
Great, thank you, Lena. As Lena mentioned, this is the part of the project that is coming up soon. Many of you know when we refer to the record of decision that we don't typically start acquiring property until after the record of the decision and the project to be built decision by the board. Those are two criteria for us. There are a few exceptions. For those who have been tracking this project closely, the board did authorize and FTA did concur. We did start a small number of properties as an early acquisition, and those were just approved by our board in the last few months. What I can tell you is this next piece is probably the one that you'll feel the most, because we're going to be reaching out to approximately 400 to 500 folks that we need to acquire property from. And there are then a similar number of folks that are occupants of those properties that may also be displaced as a part of the project. And so this is the part where we do work individually with each and every property owner, with each individual occupant, whether you're a business, whether you're a tenant, whether you're an owner occupant of a home, and work with you to determine what your needs are as we help acquire the property and help you be successfully relocated into a new location. This is the part of the project that begins, as I said, right after the record of decision, and at that point we reach out and we'll send a letter called a general information notice to all of those property owners and occupants, whether they be business or residential, that are impacted. We'll give you a person to talk with. It's a very individual process. I have about 85 folks that are working on acquisition and relocation support as a part of our projects. We'll meet you where you are, as we say. And so we do know that this is the part that feels hard for a community, because this is where we're asking folks to sell property that isn't on the market for sale, typically. We're asking folks to move when we need to acquire a property, and we're helping them do that along the way. There's a lot of detail that we can get into, but I just wanted to say that is really the place that'll come up after the record of decision.
And so then I think you're going to speak to, there's some other information here on this slide about, of course, we have to, in the final design phase, we understand better the property rights that we're going to need to construct. We're advancing design, so we have a better idea of what we're going to need to operate and maintain the system. So that'll be part of how we reach out to you and part of that conversation we have with you. The board does have to authorize these property acquisitions. As Faith mentioned, we're able to do some that were early. It is a very limited case. We have to get approval from the Federal Transit Administration to move that forward, and we've been able to. In some cases, it's possible we get an opportunity to as well again. And then I'm going to go ahead and have Faith talk just a little bit more specifically about our relocation assistance program and how we work with people and businesses that are displaced. This is a lot of text, but Faith is going to break it down for us.
Yeah. Thank you. So as Lita mentioned, there are really two categories of folks that are potentially displaced when we need to acquire property: those that are residential occupants and those that are business occupants. And there are two very different types of benefits, but I'll give you the highlight. And then we're willing to talk with each of you now to explain in more detail for your specifics, and or when after the board authorizes to move forward, then we'll again meet with you and get detailed information about how you might be impacted. In a business setting, we provide advisory services to a business owner the moment we know that they are potentially displaced. That advisory services is free and it is unlimited, as it were. If we need to move somebody's business, personal property, that bucket of benefits, I like to call it the category of benefits, is an unlimited category. So it's the cost to move items and reconnect them in a new location. We provide reestablishment benefits, so things to aid where it's not moving the property, but it's doing additional things, printing new business cards, printing new stationery, a differential in rent. Those are part of reestablishment. So the business category is very unique to that business, and we work to help you be moved into a new location. It takes a lot of time. An average relocation for business is about 18 months. That's about the time it takes. So I'll be honest, it's a longer, more thorough process. With respect to residential occupants, we have those that own property and those that are just tenants. And each of those are different categories of benefits. Really, the great thing that our federal benefits program has provided, is especially with tenants. If somebody's a tenant and we're working with them to provide differential and they pay a lower rent in one place, we know rents are higher if they have to move, they can take that rent benefit and actually become a homeowner by using it as a down payment on a house. That's a really important and cool benefit that the residential side of the benefits provide. With respect to a homeowner, how many of you got that 3% mortgage that you're hanging on tight to? A lot of us. And let's say you need to move to a home and get a new mortgage and it's not 3% anymore. It might be 6%. There's actually a mortgage rate differential as one of the benefits for moving a residential homeowner. Every benefit paid to a displacee on a relocation is a non-taxable benefit. It's not income. We have worked closely with folks that are low income, and in order to not impact their low income benefits, worked creatively to really help prepay rent for a year or two so they don't have to show it as income. We really do try to work with individuals and help them. And so I hope that what you see is that we're very, first and foremost, our job is to treat everybody fairly and with respect, and we take that very seriously, whether it's a business displacee or a residential displacee. And so each of those categories, there's the relocation brochures for both business and resident are on our website for the project. There have been some changes in the recent rules from our federal government. We're updating those now, and everybody's getting benefit of those new benefit amounts. So just look for those new brochures if you have one that you downloaded already.
All right, I know we're close to our half hour, so I'm going to keep us moving. Next steps. So as I mentioned earlier, we are nearing the close of the final, or the planning phase, looking to publish the final EIS soon, Q3 into Q3 of this year. We expect then the board to select the project to be built, a federal record of decision before the end of the year. And then we move into the design phase, and I just wanted to speak a little bit as to what that's going to look like. So during the design phase, we continue engagement on station design at the milestones. We also engage in pre-construction planning. So really wanting to engage community in what that's going to look like and how we can make that experience as smooth as possible while still constructing a very large system, of course. We engage around station naming. We identify artists for station art. As Faith described in detail, property acquisition and tenant relocation is a major way that we are engaging and body of work that we are doing, as well as some early construction activities like utility relocation may begin during this time frame. Oh, and I forgot to mention, of course, we've got to permit the project, and we start to, we go out for our construction contract procurement, which is a very important piece of helping us understand what the next steps are going to look and feel like on the ground and getting more detail, and that is something we will engage with you on as well. And then finally, during the construction phase from 2027 to 2032, I'm telling myself we're going to get there, that we do have to demolish and clear where necessary to build and operate the light rail guideway. We do work in the ground, such as stormwater systems, column footings, all those kinds of things. Of course, we construct the guideway in the stations, safety education, testing pre-operations, but in particular, we have ongoing conversations with anyone affected by construction. We take being a good neighbor very seriously, so we'll be engaging on construction impact mitigation, noise, lights, dust, providing construction updates. We have a whole business relations program to support businesses during construction, a 24-hour construction hotline. You will have contact of one of us, safety education, and of course, we'll be testing and such as well. So I just wanted to highlight those at a high level, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.